and McGill University was the only place where this was given as a class. It was fairly tight. It was limited to 6 students in the northeast of Canada and United States. And I just went there to study, to understand the brain. I quickly understand you don't understand the mind with neurology. So that's was a big disappointment, but nevertheless, it led me to study at the Montreal Neurological Institute, mostly on memory and epilepsy.
Awesome. That was a quick one. And now, how did all the stem cell part happen? Because that's what you're kind of known for nowadays. I've read also that you were like in some of the, how you call it, the medicine, like the podiums where people meet and talk about stem cell research. You are one of these speakers, one of the leading people in there. How did that happen?
Well, you know, you need to understand when we talk about stem cells that contrary to just about any other type of field of study, if you wanted, medicine at least. Outside of medicine, you could have something similar maybe in quantum physics, but in medicine, it's a field where until fairly recently, and to a large extent even today, there's no class for stem cells. You don't go to college and you study on stem cells. It's too new. There are a few universities right now that do have programs, but interestingly enough, the programs are not necessarily given by academics people. They're given by doctors in the field who have experience with using stem cells. So it's a very, very new discipline. So everybody got involved because they stumbled on it. They saw the first articles published in the scientific literature trying to describe what stem cells could do. And then those who saw, with the little bit of information available in the early, let's say 2000, saw really where that could go. Then it all started to be, to get interested and be involved, depending on which field they were coming from. Given my background in neurophysiology, I should say physiology, because I very quickly realized that I did not have the kind of patience with people to be a doctor. So I quickly realized that this was not for me. So I took the direction of the research instead. And so I quickly, because of that background, this sort of a disease of the brain that I have to try to understand everything and find an explanation for everything and dig into everything. My main question for me was, wait a minute, if stem cells can have such amazing potential, can become cells of any tissue, you can use them. I mean, at the time, the big enthusiasm was with embryonic stem cells. So you look at all of this moving forward, and for me, the thing that was virtually never talked about was, wait a minute, these stem cells, they are in our body to begin with. We're born with them. If they have such amazing potential, why don't we just tap into them? And that's a message that was absent from the field of medicine or science. And I would almost say that until today, it is fairly absent, although I believe that it's probably the one that in the future will become the most important. And the reason why it's absent is probably because it's not a topic that taps into big academia, so it remains a message that is not really conveyed in a very strong way. I do believe it's the future of stem cells.
I feel the same, by the way. When we talked last time, I explained that I got a few injections, like stem cell injections. And when I went to the doctor the first time, he actually took something from the bone marrow, from plasma, from adipose fat. So he didn't really know which one was the best. So he said, let's take them all and try it out. And just like 1 year later, he was already much more into it because he had 1 year of patience of trial and error. And he thought that's the adipose was the best one in that case. It's an always developing field, I guess. But it's super fascinating, even to me as an amateur, just seeing the potential, like how people recover from things. I recently talked to Dr. Giampapa. I don't know, because we have one guy in the organization who has MS, and there's literally nothing you can do against MS, right? So Dr.
Stem cells.
Yes, he said we have protocols for that, and they do it in Costa Rica. And just to now talk about the opposite thing, this is like taking stem cells from your body, put them outside of your body, grow them, and put them back in. But your idea with the product we have is completely different, right? Because you just do what.
Yeah, but just before we talk about, you know, what my product does, just to comment on what you said, because again, it's such a young science, and it's evolving in such a way. And also, if I open a parenthesis in my introduction to the question, is that it's, and I'm not saying this negatively, okay, but you go to college for 5, 6, 7, 10 years, and then you develop a strong expertise. I mean, you're smart, you are important, you are recognized. I mean, there's just a lot around the fact of spending so many years in study. It's counter nature and almost like belittling to just say, well, actually, the body already does it on its own. So it doesn't need me and all my knowledge into the mix, you know. It's just counter nature, you know, from academia and everything that is done from a purely medical reason. And the reason why I'm saying this is that when you say we remove stem cells, we grow them, there's a lot of these things right now that is more and more recognized as being not needed. For example, I'm doing research right now with a cardiologist who has been injecting stem cells in the heart for years. And a few years ago, he started to just put them into the bloodstream, simple injection in the bloodstream. And the reason why he's doing this is that he no longer needs to go into the operation room, sterilize, do the sophisticated approach, because he will get within 6 months the exact same results, whether he puts them in the vein or he puts them in the heart. And if you multiply them, a stem cell will multiply a number of times. So if you start that multiplication in the lab in order to inject more stem cells, or you inject them right away and they do that multiplication in the body, it doesn't extend the stem cells. They have the same multiplication. So now people are realizing you just don't need to do a whole lot. They just do it on their own. So you push this sort of thought process or these observations to the extreme, and you basically say, well, they're doing it already in the body anyway. So the only thing is that if you increase the number of stem cells in circulation just by doing something that you do naturally, which is to release your own stem cells, then you can achieve something very similar. And that's what has been really my interest over the past 20 years. And I must say, the reason why I developed that interest is really because I was working with a plant at the time. We had a lot of benefits. You're talking about MS, you know, I could make the long list of the cases that we had, and we just could not explain how these people had recovered. And then this idea came out that, well, if this plant triggers stem cell release, then all the thought at the time of what we projected stem cells could do, which at the time were just ideas and hypotheses. Well, if that plant really released stem cells, it would make sense. And this is how my adventure started into studying plants that support basically our own ability to do what the body is designed to do, which is repair and renew.
So before we get into the product, I want to dive a little bit deeper in, because I know that many people don't have yet the understanding of the power. We all promote it, of course, but what the power of stem cells. I just read, I don't know if you heard about that. It was a paper I read where some scientists, they literally took a human heart, and they emptied it completely. Only the skin was left, and they fed it with stem cells, and the whole thing like regrow as a heart. Is that an actual thing? Was it true?
Yes, it is. And actually, it's a study that was done. I don't know if you refer to that one, but there's a study like that that was done by, I think it's Doris Taylor. She was University of Detroit. And very interestingly, she is among the very, very, very first pioneers who very first in 1999, if I remember well, who for the first time put out this concept by using rats, in which she developed cardiovascular problems, heart problems through diet and, I was going to say lifestyle, but imposing things on these animals to make them develop heart problems. And she would take the animal's own stem cells and inject them back, and then she would have the animal recover or improve dramatically. And when she published that, I think that she put the entire world on notice to basically say the future is not with embryonic stem cells, it's with adult stem cells. Mm-hmm. And as part of what she did after that first study is that she took a heart, a rat heart, and then digested the entire tissue. So you use enzymes that allows you to digest everything, but enzymes will not digest collagen or cartilage, the the soft skeleton of any tissue, connective tissue. And so she digested everything, and all that was left was the connective tissue of the heart. And by taking the animal stem cells and just laying them on this connective tissue, that has the signature of the heart, because any tissue carries proteins that are specific to that tissue. That's how a stem cell knows what it needs to become. It will become the cells of the tissue in which it has been positioned or in which it migrates. So upon contact with the connective tissue of the heart, within, I don't remember the time frame here, let's say a few weeks, it was not very long, then you had a full beating heart in the test tube. So yes, these reports are true. And they opened the door to basically no longer needing organs coming from, donations. You could use your own stem cells and regrow organs. This is totally right now one of the main, I don't know if I should say main field, but one of the emerging field in stem cell research, which is to develop ways of building scaffolds with the signature of the person's tissue and the organ that needs to be regenerated, and just lay stem cells on them to rebuild new organs.
It's super fascinating, and I wanted to bring that up because of the picture. What you get when you understand there is just that tissue, but the stem cell knows exactly in what it has to convert to kind of repair that organ. And that's what happens when we have all those stem cells flying around in our blood circuit, which brings us to your research, how we can use the product basically to help our own body. Can you go into that now? Like, what does the product really do? How does it work?
Yeah, well, to answer the first part of the question, in a very simple way, if you think about the first cell that you were on the day that you were conceived, that first cell had a genome, a DNA that is now the same DNA in every single cell of your body. And yet that cell became heart cells, brain cells, liver cells, pancreatic cells, lung cells. It became everything that you have in your body. So your genome, your DNA encodes for absolutely everything in your body. It's just that one cell ends up in one tissue. It expresses the part of your DNA that encodes for the functions and the identity of being in that tissue. So now you go back to a stem cell, which is close to what was your first cell, that when you were conceived. So that cell basically has that same DNA and can become anything. So it's more a matter of a switch that you flip in the cell to give it the signal to become heart cells, muscle cells, or liver cells. So that cell, that stem cells that you release. So you take a sachet of RevitaBlu, for example, you release stem cells. So you will have an increase of 30, 40% in the number of circulating stem cells. These numbers they're true, they come from studies, but they are statistically averages. So it's really different for every person. But let's say you just release stem cells. These stem cells will migrate everywhere in the body. Anytime a tissue is in need of repair, it releases a signal, just like a tissue will release a signal if it has an infection. It releases signals that will attract stem cells. The same signals are released specifically for stem cells. So when a stem cell circulates and sees that signal, it migrates in that tissue. When it ends up, and this is happening at the capillary level. So at the capillary level, when you leave the capillary, you're no longer into the main circulation. You're very, very within the very heart of any tissue. So the moment you leave the capillary, then you are in contact with the tissue. Now, each cells of any tissue, liver, heart, lung, it doesn't matter. They all have proteins on their surface that are very specific for that tissue. These are the molecules that a stem cells will get in contact with, and it will send a signal inside the cell, the stem cells, to turn on the DNA that will make that cell now transform into cells of that tissue. The mystery in all of this that is not, at this point, as far as I understand, really explained, it's one of those mystical aspects of the body, is it's one thing to become a cell of a tissue, but it's another thing to lay yourself in that tissue in a way where you actually just not make a lump within that tissue, but you actually truly repair that tissue with everything that this tissue has. Let's take, for example, the skin. It's just not the skin. It's sweat glands, hair follicles, sebaceous glands, capillaries. It's everything that you have in the skin. Stem cells will do all of that. And that's what is so unique about your own stem cells. When you inject stem cells, sometimes it's not physiological. It does not happen exactly the way that it should be, that it should happen. When you release your own stem cells, that's the miracle. So your stem cells will go into your tissue and will repair these tissues with, for lack of better term, with the blueprint that the tissue already has since you're born. Like you've got, I don't know, you've got a certain hair color, you've got a certain mark in your face, and the skin will repair with the blueprint that is you. I mean, it's a mystery and it's beautiful.
Let me put that in easy words because that was very scientific.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. I love it. So me personally, I just love the science behind it, but I know that some people just sat there and are like, okay, what did he just say? let me put it together as an easy metaphor, an easy story, and correct me if that's right. So basically, it's like you have some construction sites in your body which need repair, and right now you have like 2 or 3 construction builders working on that site, and it takes a long time to really recover. But what we do now is we actually like we release like thousands or millions of construction workers, which now go to all those sites and just help building, and everybody's a specialist. Like one is a plumber, one is whatever, the guy who does the lights. So one is for tissue, one is for ligaments, one is for growth factors, whatever it is, just making something up. Is that how you can see it?
Yeah, let me, if you want to go into a simple analogy like this, let me put this one. You know, what I'm going to tell you is sort of ridiculous, but at the same time, it's a nice image. Let's imagine here that you've got a house, you know, where you could have a broken wall, a brick missing, a window broken, a leaking roof, a plumbing that is leaking, and your heating unit that is not functioning properly. And I bring to you an amorphous brick that if you put it in the wall, it becomes the wall. You put it on the ceiling, on the roof, and it seals the roof. You put it into your plumbing, and it turns into a new piping. You put it into your heating unit, and it becomes the furnace. It will have the ability of transforming in anything that needs repair. That's pretty much what a stem cell does.
Perfect. I will stay with this example. That's much better than my one. Cool. Awesome. So now let's dive into, because now we understand what stem cells basically do. And now let's get into how we can have access to our stem cells. And that's the product you designed.
Correct.
Let's get into that one.
Okay. Just before I go there, because I want really to make this.
People get super excited because we always say, like, before we go to the product, let's do one more thing.
Well, I just think, you know, I did a lot of
all the time in the world. People love it. Just check the chat. Everybody is loving it. Give some love, give some feedback. If you see, everybody's super excited.
Thank you, guys. You know, when I said that I was very interested by the mind, what I did when I was in my teens is start to study accelerated learning techniques, ways to learn very, very quick. And I wrote a book on this that became fairly popular in those days. But how to learn quick. And one of the main things to learn quick is it's very difficult to absorb one piece of information, but if you put it in its context, then that information takes a whole different meaning in terms of understanding. So through all of this, you know, I have the habit of trying to put everything into a greater context. So it kind of makes sense and it ties to other things. So your question here with, tell me again your question. It was how the product works.
Yeah, what's the transition to the product now? Like, how can we use it, and how do we have access to our stuff?
And my small parenthesis here in terms of context is just to say that this is all new science. So the brain goes, or the mind goes into a place of thinking, this is novel. And we really need to put that into the context that there's nothing novel here. What you have in your body was there since you're born. And before you, it's been there for thousands and tens of thousands of years. Stem cells, our knowledge about it is new, but it's a very, very normal part of your body. So everything that we talk about stem cells here, we've been doing this forever. So just like you stimulate your immune system, you just stimulate your stem cell system or your repair system. And in this whole context, one thing that has emerged through hundreds of studies, if not thousands of studies. And that's a lot what is described in the book, Cracking the Stem Cell Code, which I'm working now on a new edition to add some of the information on these plants. So we'll come back to that. But if if you increase, the way to summarize all this science is to understand that the main link between health and your stem cells is how many stem cells you have in your bloodstream available to participate to that process. So you go back to your example of the workers or my example of the brick. How many workers do you have available to do the job? I mean, it's pretty simple. That's basically what it is. And I will push it even further. In 2013, I published an article, again, a novel idea. Basically, the idea was that your ability to stay healthy is actually a consequence of your ability every day to do what we call endogenous repair, meaning just repairing the little things that are happening every day. Every day you lose cells, you need to replace them. As long as you can replace them, you can stay healthy. But as you age, you have fewer and fewer stem cells because your red marrow that makes stem cells transform into yellow marrow. And that happens way sooner than anybody can imagine. By age 15, 18, you've lost most of your bone marrow, your red marrow making stem cells. Now go to 28 years old, you're pretty much left with only your flat bones, your rib, your sternum, pelvis. Your long bones have all lost their ability, except the head of these bones, to do stem cells. And from then on, from 28 and on, then it's a slow decline. And that is why past 28, let's say in your 30s, then suddenly you start to realize you don't repair as well as you used to. It is all a function of how many stem cells you have in circulation in your bloodstream. We all have a different number of cells. You measure your red blood cells, they'll be different than mine. We have like healthy ranges, and you can be above, you can be lower. We have not yet established this for stem cells, but it's the same thing. If you are below a certain range, you are at risk for developing problems, not because you develop the problem, but because you have a decline in your ability to replace the cells that are being lost. And it's that deficiency, daily deficiency, that accumulates into an organ problem down the road. So with all of this information, what I suggested is that one of the main fundamental explanation or mechanism for aging and disease development is a deficiency in the number of stem cells. And the one way to test this is to go and count the number of stem cells in the bloodstream of people who have developed all kinds of age-related problems and see what's their number of stem cells compared to healthy people. And now there's probably about 50 of those studies that have been done. And you look at virtually any kind of age-related degenerative problem. And the people who have developed the problem have on average half the number of stem cells that you find in healthy people. So all of this, to come back to your question, what does the product do? It does one super simple thing. It just supports a function that your body already has, which is to release stem cells. It kicks a little bit more stem cells in circulation. And when you have these stem cells, they will do what they do, which is repair something if something needs to be repaired, or supports this daily process of maintaining your tissue, replacing the cells that are being lost, so that that health, you maintain it through time as you age, and you don't develop the problem that are linked to a deficiency in stem cells.
So always when I take the product, how long does it take until it triggers the release? And do you have
Okay. If I bring you this miracle brick to your house and you ask me, how long does it take for this to repair my house? Well, to a large extent, it depends on what is the rate of decline of your house, and how many things in your house needs to be repaired, and where is the thing that needs the quickest repair. It's exactly the same thing. So you release stem cells. What is the level of stem cells to begin with? What are the different degenerative processes taking place in various parts of the body? You take the product because you want your knee to repair, because you have knee pain, okay? But you may have other things in your body that are way more important to repair than your knee pain, but you're not aware of them. If your heart is in trouble right now, you may not be aware of it if you don't force yourself. There are many things here that may be going down and you're not really aware of them. We need to understand that there's not one degenerative problem regarding health that happens overnight. That happens within a month. That happens within a year. That happens within 2-3 years. They all happens within 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. So even when you're healthy today, you are now developing things that will show up down the road. So when you release stem cells, the stem cells are attracted to these places. They go there, they do repair. If stem cells did not work, you would not be alive today. You're alive today because your stem cells are released every day and they keep you alive. Otherwise, you would not be there. Stem cells work every day. They work all the time. They work for everybody. So now you go back to the product. As we put more stem cells in the body, these stem cells in the bloodstream, they simply go and they repair different things. So the time that it would take to see something depends on your expectation, depends on the ongoing level of decline, depending on your lifestyle, your genetics, and a series of factors. And it depends on the degree of the problem, how far the problem is. And given all of this, which is really unique to every individual and oftentimes undefinable, like there are too many variables to these, to determine how much time it will take. But I will say that the results will be anywhere between 1 week to 1 year. Most of the time, I would say 2-3 months, people see something. By see something, it doesn't mean it starts to work. It means you start to become aware of what these stem cells are doing in the body, because the product doesn't do anything. Your body does the job.
And if we go now on the level of if I take the product, like, do you know how long it takes until the stem cells get released? Not until the problem is solved. So what I'm referring to is it better taking it 1 time a day? Or could you even say, hey, I want like more action in my body. I could take it like 7 times a day or 10 times or 3 times. Okay. Would that make a difference?
Yes. So here's how it works, like normal physiology. A stem cell is released from the bone marrow. It will be in circulation in the bloodstream anywhere between 6 minutes to 6 hours, average 1 hour. It goes everywhere, circulates everywhere, and wherever there's a signal to go and repair, it migrates in that tissue and it goes to do repair. There's one place in your body that constantly signals for repair, although it does not need repair. It's your bone marrow. Your bone marrow retains stem cells with the same mechanism that a tissue will call for stem cells because it needs repair. So the stem cell goes everywhere, and if it does not encounter a tissue that is in need of repair, it goes back to your bone marrow. So as you take 1 sachet of RevitaBlu and you release 3, 4, 5, 6 million stem cells, roughly that's about the number, they circulate everywhere, and we don't know how many of them will go to the tissues or go back to the bone marrow. I have no idea here how much. It depends on every individual. So those that will go to a tissue, when they arrive in the tissue, they have the potential of multiplying through 50 generations. So that means one stem cells can become hundreds of thousands of cells. Statistically, on average, I would say studies will say 5 to 10,000 cells. It's hard to put a number, but let's say it's a significant amplification. That process will take place over days. It's not happening all at once. As they divide, they also start to become cells of these tissues called tissue-committed stem cells, then progenitor cells, and then tissue cells. In this whole process, you have a few days involved in this process. So anytime you take 1 sachet, its effect will last for maybe a week or 2. But the effect in the blood is going to last maybe, I would say on average, maybe 4 hours. So if you want to maximize the effect, you can take 1 sachet of RevitaBlu, let's say every 4 to 6 hours, and you send these waves of stem cells in the bloodstream. It is probably the best way to use the product whenever one feels that they need significant repair for whatever reason. Then when it's just maintenance, 1 or 2 a day is plenty.
Perfect. That's a super important information, because specifically like for a person like me focusing on a knee issue, I mean, just like by logic, I would say, okay, I might have, or I do have a lot of other issues, as you just said. But if I take enough and I give my body the possibility to have enough stem cells circling, chances are much higher they reach my knee as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing to understand here, to me, where this is how could I say, a paradigm changing in terms of concept. And it's very subtle what I'm going to tell you, but to me, when you start to sit with it, you start to realize it changes everything in medicine. Today, the best of medicine is preventive medicine. So you try not to have the problem. It's like me telling you the best way to be wealthy is to prevent poverty. You'll never be wealthy if your strategy is to prevent poverty. you'll just not be poor. So are we looking for just not be sick? Or are we trying to find a way to give the body its edge and its platform, its leverage to just be the best that it can be? I'm not talking about being Superman here and living 300 years. All I'm saying here is your body has a natural system of health, of repair. So that's your best thing that you have to reach and maintain optimal health. So let's go beyond just preventing something, and let's just say now we can give the body the ability to be the best that it can be, because we have been brainwashed. So I know it's a big term here, but we've been like programmed with this concept that if you're not sick, you're healthy. And if you really sit with this for just a few seconds, you understand it's not true. The moment you get a diagnosis, before that, you were not doing optimally. There's a big and vast gray area between being optimally healthy and having a diagnosis. In there, you don't run as fast as you used to. You don't breathe as well as you used to. You don't think as sharply as you used to. You don't sleep as well. I mean, there's just a lot of things here that we don't do as we used to, or we don't do as well as the neighbor maybe is doing. We have the ability to have optimal health, but we're okay with it because it's not a disease. And we only start to do something when we've got a problem. So this way of looking at health as being having a problem or no problem skews our strategy about health, and it makes us do something only when there's a problem. And this is bringing a new platform. The platform is simply to say, your body is developing a problem no matter what. It's just normal aging. You are in decline. If you put more stem cells in circulation, that's what your body uses to help maintain health. So if you give that edge to the body, you can go way beyond prevention. You can go into health maintenance. So think about the cost saving in a society by just staying healthy compared to having to manage the problem. Think about, you eliminate the loss of quality of life, the loss of productivity, the cost of treatment. It is huge what it has in terms of implications socially. That's why I'm thinking this is the biggest thing into the future of stem cells, I believe.
Awesome. Super, super amazing information. We had conversations before, but just from that conversation, I learned so much already. And people are in the chat are going crazy. It's super interesting. They're like, the first time ever, they're like completely quiet, because usually the chat is exploding because they're concentrated. And then after you finished, everybody's like, wow, that's super information. I'm speechless. Drop the mic, somebody says. So let's talk about something which is regarding the actual situation, but let's try to address it in a way that it's, let's say, like legal, because we're not allowed to do health claims, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I know from conversations with you that stem cells also have an effect on our natural immune system, let's say like that, but you never talk about it because it's usually not the reason why you did the research for. Can you get a little bit into that topic? Because I think that's something what many people are interested in right now.
Yeah. Well, when we observed the effect of the first plant, the blue-green algae, that what we studied on stem cells, which is the one on which we have the most scientific information, just because that's the one that we started with. I mean, by this mechanism of action and, you know, all the active molecules, how they work and all of that. It's not necessarily the most effective that we have studied, but it's the most documented. So, and interestingly, not the one with the largest history of use. Like take the Buckthorn Berry extract. We have thousands of years of history with the use of these ingredients. But so if we go back to the first ingredients that we work with, when I was doing this with Dr. Jensen, my interest was when I started to see this potential of stem cells, I saw the regenerative aspect of it. And this is really what I pursued. But around the same time, what was also emerging, and that's where she puts more of her attention, is the fact that stem cells have a very, very powerful anti-inflammatory effect. And they do this in a way that nothing else in the body or in nature can do, which is the fact that if you take, how can I do a nice analogy? Let me make this analogy. Again, it's a silly analogy, but I think it will be a nice preamble here to the answer. Go back to our house where we have a problem with the window and the brick and everything. So you have a flood in your house. So everything is moist, everything is wet. I can do two things. I can blow a lot of hot air, I can suck all the water, but you're not taking away the moisture that is left into the small corners of the house, the small little cracks everywhere. So let's say now I have small particles that I can send into your house, and they specifically go into the small cracks to remove not the moisture everywhere, but where it really grows the molds, where it really creates the problem. So we have the same thing here. Inflammation is great. Well, it's great. I mean, inflammation is happening in the body. So you take an anti-inflammatory compound to reduce systemic inflammation. It's very important to do this, but it may not necessarily always address the very small area, the place, the foci, the location where the inflammation is actually being generated microscopically. Well, that's one thing that stem cells will do. They are genuinely, it's their function. They are attracted by these locations in the body where this microinflammation is generated. This is where they migrate. And when they arrive in these small areas locally, they start to release compounds that suppress the immune function, suppress inflammation. And what I mean by suppress the immune function is that we live in a world where, and that may be a new message for a lot of the people on your call, we want to boost the immune system. But we don't realize that your immune system is your biggest producer of free radicals and inflammation product in your body. You don't want to boost your immune system. You want an immune system that is prime, meaning it's ready to react quickly, but it reacts within balance and it's shut down when it's done and it no longer needs to be active. And one of the biggest problem with the current situation here that you're referring to is not the virus itself. It's what it triggers in the body. It triggers what is referred to as a cytokine storm, which is the creation in many areas of the body, these small locations that go crazy into the production of these inflammatory products to the point where it actually just take down the organ itself. And then that is really the severe problem associated with that. So what studies have shown.
So it's an overreaction of the immune system?
Absolutely. It's an overreaction of the immune system. Fairly known. They refer to this as a cytokine storm. So the system just goes, it's a new exposure, it's a new virus, so people just go into overdrive. And that's the problem. So stem cells have been documented. The paper came out last week. So stem cells have been to be able to go to these areas and do what stem cells do naturally here. Nothing out of the ordinary. They go to these areas and they do what mesenchymal stem cells, a specific type of stem cells released by RevitaBlu, that's what they do. They go to these areas and then they basically do what they do, which is calm this cytokine storm and allow the body to do its job within the realm of repair that the body is well capable of doing.
Mm-hmm. That's an amazing information in general for all kinds of, let's say, like diseases, infections. I mean, it's incredible, as you just said, not only helping out if you have an issue, but preventing the issues. And that's
I would go further. Put away all reference to disease or anything. Just from a very healthy perspective, to understand that your body has something, the stem cells. One of their function is to repair, but another one of their function as they repair, actually, because it's sort of one and the same, as they go into an area that is signaling, one of their function is also when they arrive there to take over and coordinate the whole process to make sure that it stays within a healthy range, healthy bounds, and when the repair is over, it shuts down. So it helps balance the entire response. It's part of their mission, part of their role.
Here's another question, which is a common one. Many people ask, can stem cells also support the growth of cancer cells, malicious tumors, in case they exist in the body, even though you're not aware of it?
No, but to explain the answer to that gets quickly fairly complicated. So I'll try to keep it as simple as we can, okay? But no, it does not. For the simple reason that even if a tumor or a cancer can emerge from a stem cell in a tissue, that stem cell has acquired a mutation that makes them now be a cancer cell. If a stem cell that you have released goes to that tissue, it has its own DNA. the mutation itself is not infectious. So it's not going to touch. So you releasing stem cells does not affect, and if anything, and I won't go too far in there, but if anything, what is emerging is that it can also have a calming effect or a dampening effect, you know, on the development of these disorganized cells, for lack of a better term. So if anything, it can be beneficial, but no, it does not stimulate tumor growth in any way.
Perfect. Has anyone any super important question, but please not regarding diseases or anything. We don't have time to go into that one. But is there any specific question regarding stem cells, regarding the product? That's your time now to post something. So if that's fine with you, Christian, we will go for another like 5 minutes of Q&A.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, perfect. Because we really need to use the time with you. it's so hard to get you. Maybe you can just look through and see what kind of questions you would like to answer.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, blue-green algae. Mm-hmm.
Let me just translate one because that's in German and very common. Can you take it when you're pregnant?
Okay, there is the how could I say, the documented answer and there's the legal answer. The legal answer is if something has not been studied with pregnant women, then technically you cannot market it or recommend it for pregnant women. So this product has not been specifically studied. So I will say in an abundance of caution that if somebody is not already taking the product, if they are pregnant and they want to start taking the product, I would say just wait until the end of the pregnancy. This being said, we have had many stories, and maybe we can talk about that another time. But there are many instances where we have seen very interesting benefits. So I would say if you're already on it, then stay on it. It's totally fine.
Cool. What else do we have? There's a lot of German questions. Guys, you need to write in English because Christian does not speak German.
I saw one about the sustainability of blue-green algae. And, you know, it's one of the reasons why, because I've been working with this plant for a long time. And one of the challenge that we met in the past is that at a point with a previous company, we had grown so much that twice we reached that point where the problem was to have access to the product. It's not the sustainability because the product grows, believe me, the town where it grows in Klamath Falls, they would love to kill this blue-green algae because it kills their recreational business industry. So they have tried to kill it in the past. They're unable to kill it. It's too massive. So it is not the growth that is a problem in sustainability, is how much you can get. And so that's the reason why we diverted toward other product like the sea buckthorn that is growing on the Tibetan plateau over tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of acres, and where it is very easy to scale up without having any impact on the environment. And we try to do this with the various ingredients that we're using.
So there was one which is also very common. Yeah, does it accelerate the healing of, for example, broken bones? I think you, yeah, okay. I think you talked about it already, but let's.
Well, I did not specifically say bones, but basically anything that is broken, I'm taking here a very general term, that area will signal. It sends a chemical signal that calls for stem cells to specifically come there and participate to the process of tissue repair. This can happen in two ways. It can either be the stem cells themselves transform into cells of that tissue and repair, or they start to release compounds that are sort of growth factors that will stimulate the stem cells already residing into the tissue. The end result is the same. It's repair. This is true for the bones, for the skin. It's true for everything in the body.
Mm-hmm. RevitaBlu and AMPM, is it a good combination? And RevitaBlu and Reserve, is it a good combination?
Perfect combinations. And I could spend a lot of time going into the synergy here, but let's just say that they work together very beautifully. One stem cell, remember, can become many thousand cells in the tissue. So when you release 5 million, this is 20-30 billion tissue cells that you've generated. You do this 2-3 times a day, just look at the amplification in the tissue is phenomenal. So once we realize what is happening there, we oftentimes say the brain takes about 1/5 of your energy. Well, I think that this aspect of the renewal of the body and the repair of the body is probably using a lot of the metabolic demand of the body. So DNA protection, DNA duplication, nutrients, vitamins, minerals, reducing oxidative stress to allow stem cells to work better. So AMPM reserve, that's what they do. So you couple all of them together, there's a great synergy.
Is there an age limit to take it? I'm talking about the lower limit kids, because that's also what many parents ask.
Yeah, there's not. It's the same thing as with pregnant women. Without a specific study, we cannot recommend it, but there's no limits. I will say that interestingly, when I started all of this, I thought we would not see results with more stem cells with young kids. They already release plenty. And with older people, they're so far into the decline of the bone marrow that, you don't get a lot of stimulation. And all I can say is that 20 years later, this way of thinking is completely substantiated by what we have seen in the field. We have seen very, very, very young kids with great results, and we have seen people 95 years old and above experiencing really great benefits by having stem cells. So at the end of the day, the conclusion is at any point in one's life, more stem cells means a greater ability to renew and repair.
Fantastic. Last question for today. Is there a chance, can you provide access to some of the studies? Because we have some people from the medical field, and always when they approach their doctors and colleagues, it's the same things. Where's the study? What can we use?
I can send you all the studies that have been done. And the point will be for you to tell me where you want to stop, because there's sort of a few levels to this. One level is the studies on how the ingredient in a RevitaBlu supports the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. So the science on these ingredients. Then the link between more stem cells in circulation and tissue repair. And then the link between those ingredients and specific tissue repair in some clinical trials or case studies. So there's, and when you go in depth in all of these, and we're talking about dozens and dozens and dozens of studies. So you tell me where you want to stop, that I can send it to you.
Perfect. I wouldn't particularly, but of course we have professionals and they can pick. Of course. It would be a great source for everyone. Would be amazing. Yeah. Christian, it was a pleasure having you on the call. It was amazing. We could go on for more 2 or 3 hours. Maybe we're going to do some more calls in the future if you're available. But I think the people really loved it. So give a quick feedback if he shall come back and to tell you more. I think you did an amazing job and you gained a few fans.
Thank you so much. There's one thing to say if there's a conclusion to give, and I say this sometimes when I lecture. It's a small little sachet that looks like nothing. You put it in water, it just gives you like sweet water. It looks like nothing. If people understood the depth of what your body can do with more stem cells, and we've talked about some of this in the past, some of the case that we have seen in the past, we cannot even talk about them with conditions at which sometimes, nothing can be done. The impact of having more stem cells in circulation can be so strong, so profound on the body that it looks like a benign product. But I would say, give it a try and see what it can do for you, because it can be profound.
I will go to my back office and reorder now, because I'm taking it every single day, but now I'm even motivated to take more sachets per day again after that conversation. It's just sometimes the understanding, right, of the science behind it, because you can't feel it directly. You can't, you don't have a direct connection, but just understanding it, it's just mind-blowing. Once again, thank you very much. See you soon, hopefully somewhere in the world on some stage soon, if that crazy. And yeah, thanks once again for coming.
Thank you so much.
Applause for Christian. And see you soon. Thanks a lot. I have to do the German translation now, so if you just you can stay, but you can also leave just by yourself. That will be the hard part now, wrapping that one up in German.
Okay. Nice being with you guys.
Thank you. So guys, that was Christian Drapeau, our expert for stem cells from the Jeunesse Scientific Advisory Board. Amazing information. And now I'm going to switch to German. I will stop the recording. And for all of you who want to stay to get the German wrap up, please feel free so.